Tonight on To The Point, we discuss enforced disappearances. Now, with so many people missing year in, year out, just where is the missing link and what needs to be done to remedy the situation? That conversation and the day's stories coming your way shortly, but first, the highlights. Raila accuses the Kenya Kwanza government of hypocrisy for lifting the logging ban and still hosting the Africa Climate Summit. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar as grabbed land is surrendered back to its original owner. And it's all systems go for the Africa Climate Summit, which begins tomorrow till Thursday.
The fact that we are having this first ever conference on climate change is in itself a statement of success.
Welcome to the broadcast. We invite you to engage with us on our social media platforms at TV47 News on Twitter, TV47 Kenya on Facebook, and at Grace Kuria KE on Twitter. My name is Grace Kuria Kanja. Welcome to the broadcast, and our sign language interpreter tonight is Rhoda Nyamai. Now, Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya leader Raila Odinga wants the government to reverse an order permitting cutting down of grown trees in forests around the country. Odinga says the order by President William Ruto will lead to environmental destruction, insisting that the Kenya Kwanza Azimio dialogue team must address the issue of opening the 2022 presidential election service. And as Mike Kagwongo reports, Kenya hosts the Africa Climate Summit from Monday to Wednesday at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC.
Speaking in Narok County, Azimio leader Raila Odinga slammed the government for lifting the ban on logging, despite being host of the 2023 Africa Climate Summit from tomorrow to Wednesday.
Unasema unataka kuhifadhi mazingira na mawe inaenda. Mazingira gani unataka kuhifadhi? Hakuna. Hawa ni wanafiki.
He said he tried to stop destruction of the Mau forest ahead of last year's polls, but his efforts hit snag due to what he terms as a political hate.
Tulijaribu sana kuhifadhi Mau, lakini jamaa walikuwa kila mara kwa mara na wanaolafi ya mambo ya ardhi. Watu wameingia ndani ya Mau wanakatakata miti huko. Tulisema watoke. Tukaambiwa kwamba nyinyi hamtapata kura zetu baadaye.
He maintained his push to have the 2022 presidential election servers opened, adding that the country cannot go to the 2027 polls with an electoral body constituted by President William Ruto.
Hata sheria inasema kwamba kabla uchaguzi ingine ijaandaliwa inatakana server ikaguliwe. Uchaguzi ikaguliwe sawa sawa.
Odinga said the national government should leave distribution of subsidized fertilizer to devolved units as a way of supporting implementation of the constitution. And in response to Narok County Governor Patrick Ole Ntutu's recent calls to paint Narok County UDA yellow by inviting members of the rival parties, particularly ODM, to defect, the former Prime Minister bashed Ole Ntutu over frustrating the ODM party and warned him against meddling in ODM affairs.
Anaongea juu ya ODM ati watu waache toke ODM waende siji wapi. Yeye alijua ODM iliundwa wakati gani? Na kama anasema hiyo atoke, turudi naye kwa debe tuone kama ataweza kushinda.
Mike Kagwongo, TV47, Nairobi.
Kimasai vizuri. Atafute jina la Kimasai.
Thank you so much, Mike Kagongo, for that. And it's all hands on deck as the organizers put final touches on preparations for tomorrow's Africa Climate Summit at KICC Nairobi. Among the curtain raiser events was the Africa Youth Climate Assembly 2023, put together to bring youth climate leaders from across Africa in the global fight against climate change. Tiaty Josephine tells us more.
With final touches all but complete, it is all systems go for the three-day Africa Climate Summit 2023, which opens in Nairobi on Monday, September 4th to 6th of September. Welcome. During the Youth Assembly, President William Ruto lauded the youth in the African continent for being a part and pioneering in the fight against effects of climate change.
I am also encouraged that the young people of our continent are stepping forward boldly to say we don't want to be bystanders. We want to participate. We have ideas that we can present on the one single challenge that faces humanity and that threatens our future.
The head of state encouraged countries to invest in the space around agriculture, value addition, agro-processing and manufacturing to create opportunities for young people, as well as deal with food insecurity.
65% of the world's arable and cultivated land is in this continent. It presents one of the biggest opportunities for us as a continent to double our cereal production, to deal with the challenge of hunger, but to also use it to drive agro-processing, value addition, manufacturing that would then create jobs for our young population in our continent.
While noting that the largest shareholders of Africa are the young people, the president emphasized on the need of empowering the young people in different dimensions.
The 1.4 billion people in this continent, our median age is at 19, meaning that this continent has the largest number of young people anywhere on the globe. And these young people need jobs. And we have the resources and the opportunities to do it.
On a sour note, several local youth-led organizations and Operation Linda Ugatuzi have criticized what they feel is unfair treatment at the hands of some of the conference planners.
Power! Soipan must go! Power! Soipan must go! It is worth noting that thousands of interested young people who applied as delegates for the Africa Climate Summit, ACS 2023, and African Climate Summit ACW 2023 to be held at KICC have expressed profound disappointment and frustrations they have met in the hands of the Ministry of Environment, committee in charge of the entire event planning.
As the conference begins, the government is confident that the Africa Climate Summit 2023 will be a success. Tiaty Josephine, TV47.
Thank you, Tiaty Josephine, for that. Now, the proposed bill by Cabinet seeking to increase NHIF deductions up to 2.75% has come under criticism at a time that Kenyans have not yet come to terms with the implementation of the contentious Finance Act 2023. While questioning why the existing contribution to NHIF is not properly benefiting Kenyans, Mwingi Central MP Gideon Mulungi has decried that the increasing contribution to NHIF is not timely as Kenyans are reeling from the high cost of living. Now, to this end, he has urged his colleagues in Parliament to reject the proposed bill in cushioning Kenyans from what he calls overtaxation by the Kenya Kwanza government.
Ushuru ukiongezwa na Ruto. Unasikia? Akiongeza ushuru, akiongeza mafuta, akiongeza kila kitu, anaweka juu juu. Kila kitu yote ni juu. Tukasema
Right, and remember later on in this broadcast, we're going to have a conversation on enforced disappearances, of course, coming on the back of the International Day of commemorating victims of enforced disappearance, which happened on Wednesday, that was August the 30th. My panel shall consist of Penina Koome, who is the chairperson, Kenya Champions for Justice, and a victim herself, J.A.M. Waiganja, Commissioner IPOR, and Irungu Houghton, the Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya. That is certainly a conversation that you do not want to miss, and it shall come your way shortly. But first, let's move on with the day's stories. And for a fair and inclusive transition to renewable energy for Africa is one of the key points at the upcoming Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi. However, the youth need to be integral in that transition for it to be successful. These were the sentiments that emerged in one of the side events in the run-up to the inaugural Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi. Wanjira Mathai, Managing Director, Africa and Global Partnerships for the World Resources Institute, who was in attendance, underscored the importance of the youth in achieving an inclusive and fair energy transition, noting the importance of investing in the youth to ensure long-term prosperity.
This youth can acquire the right skills that are required for the renewable energy. This youth can acquire the certifications that they need to be able to establish their own businesses, but also to be able to access jobs in the renewable energy sector. Is training youth in regenerative agriculture. We have a demo farm here, organic farming on 5 acres. We have skills that we are training in solar energy.
Visit here is just a stepping stone in our cooperation in the years to come.
Hope the partners will assist Toolkit to scale it.
Right, we do apologize for that technical hitch there. We take our first break on TV47 Weekend Edition. Stay with us.
Wakati ambapo wapo nje ya ofisi, wakati ambapo hawapo kwenye biashara, tunawapata nyumbani wakituelezea story na historia.
Na generally challenging, then to be a total man you have to have a cow at least.
Ndoto yangu mimi nilikuwa napenda sana masuala ya security.
Kila siku ya Alhamisi kuendelea. Nami Elizabeth Mchuko.
Welcome to the Mwai Kibaki Convention Center, the premier events venue. Our state-of-the-art facilities are designed to meet all your needs, from large-scale conferences to intimate meetings and everything in between. Located in the heart of Thika, the Mwai Kibaki Convention Center offers stunning views of the city skyline and is easily accessible from all major transportation hubs. Our facility features ample parking, free Wi-Fi, advanced audiovisual equipment, and our technical team is always on hand to ensure your event runs smoothly and seamlessly. Don't take our word for it. Make your next event unforgettable at the Mwai Kibaki Convention Center. Contact us today for bookings and reservations. Email multimedia@mku.ac.ke or call us on 0708 212204 or 0727 441733 or 0721 438 629 to learn more about our services and book your event.
Radio 47.
Right, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has recovered public land worth 305 million, which was illegally obtained from Kisita Mpungute Marine Reserve in Kwale County. Now, the island, which belongs to the Kenya Wildlife Service, has been recovered through the Commission's alternative dispute resolution mechanism, which facilitates suspects in possession of public property to enter into negotiations with the Commission on terms for voluntary surrender and return of the stolen property to the Commission to avert the lengthy and costly court process. Let's get more from George Maringa.
In a rare move that has been likened to giving Caesar what belongs to Caesar, 4 parcels that had been gazetted as public land and had been illegally allocated to 4 individuals were returned to EACC to facilitate the cancellation of the titles and fresh registration under KWS, the lawful owner. On 2nd August 2022, Kenya Wildlife Service lodged a complaint at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Lower Coast Regional Office, Mombasa. The report alleged that illegal demarcation or alienation of public land belonging to KWS and issuance of 4 titles to private entities. Valued at a total of 305 million shillings, the parcels within the Kisita Mpungute Marine National Reserve are under management and conservation of the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS. According to EACC, the allocation and transfer of this land to private individuals was illegal and fraudulent since it had been gazetted as Kisita Mpungute National Park and Reserve. As such, the parcels were not available for allocation to any person.
Wakati urejesho huu umefanyika, imegunduliwa pia yakana kwamba mmoja wa wale ambao walikuwa wamenyakua hivyo visiwa alikuwa tayari ameanza shughuli za kujenga ile airstrip ama uwanja mdogo wa ndege.
The Commission concluded investigations on the matter and issued a demand notice to the illegal beneficiaries on 25th July 2023, informing them that they were in illegal possession of the public land and that a recovery suit would soon ensue if they did not surrender the same to the Commission voluntarily.
Kama kuna mshukiwa yeyote ambaye anamiliki mali ambayo imepatikana kinyume cha sheria kutoka kwa serikali, anaweza akajitokeza kwa tume ya EACC na kurejesha mali hiyo kwa njia ya kujitolea, kwa njia ya hiari, kwa sababu tayari sheria inatoa ule utaratibu ambao unaweza kufuatwa.
The property returned to EACC comprised 3 out of the 4 stolen parcels, namely titled numbers Kwale Shimoni 493, Kwale Shimoni 494, and Kwale Shimoni 496. They were returned by 3 private entities, namely Pwani Holdings Resort Limited, Bantus Investment Limited, and Pangos Limited, the illegal owners to whom the public land had been transferred. Proceedings for recovery of the 4th parcel by the 4th private entity are underway. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
And the Hindu faithful today gathered at the Bab Swami Narayan temple to celebrate the 24th anniversary of the temple. According to the faithful, the celebrations seek to pray for blessings, prosperity, love, political stability and rains in the country. The temple that was built in 1999 by Pramukh Swami Maharaj serves as a symbol of peace and unity among the faithful.
Temple has been here for last 24 years. Next year we will be celebrating its silver jubilee. Since its inception, this organization contributed a lot to the society, not only in terms of spirituality, but in terms of social services also. We do a lot of social activities, charitable activities, in education sector, in health sector, in environmental sector.
This temple was built in 1999 by His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj, and it has been a symbol of absolute divinity. And today we have prayed for a lot of things. We've prayed for peace, we've prayed for health for everyone, we've prayed for political stability in Kenya, we've prayed for the rains, which is absolutely necessary right now. Also, we've prayed for safety for everyone.
And for a long period of time, Tiaty constituency in Baringo County was believed to be a home of banditry and cattle rustling. But there is more to Tiaty than the wild, wild west reputation. As our reporter narrates, this area also is known for the amazing beauty. For instance, the Lomechan Magical Cave, a waterfall that contains hot water at Kapedo Silale Crater, and the amazing Pokot culture.
This is Kapedo area in Tiaty constituency in Baringo County. We make our way to the Lomechan Cave, which is believed to be 10 kilometers long. It is also believed that no one has explored the cave to its end. According to the residents, long time ago the ancestors used it as a hideout from dangerous animals.
Hiyo wakati wanyama waliishi kwa pande hii, siku nyingine waliishi yote kabisa. Mpaka watu walienda kuingia ndani, kuenda kuishi ndani. Kwa sababu walikuwa wanyama porini wanataka kukula watu kwa sababu mfugo yote imeisha. Wanyama pori wanataka kukula watu. Mpaka watu wanaingia ndani.
It's quite dark, so you have not managed to do the 5 kilometers. And even those that have done the 5 kilometers tells us that they have never gotten to the end. So we are not sure if it's 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers. I was also worried by yesterday evening because the stories that we have heard from here are not very good.
A few miles away is Lale Crater. Here we have a hot waterfall in full majestic display. It is this hidden beauty of location and culture that Kenya Film Board CEO Timothy Owase believes needs to be shown to the world.
Besides the waterfall, I've experienced very rich culture of people of this particular community. In addition to that, the landscape is amazing. You can be able to see Kenya in different formats by coming to this place.
Tiaty resident Immaculate Kasaiti, who is also an educationist, believes that making the site a tourist attraction is the one way of changing the reputation of the area as a bandit-prone area.
It will open up the hospitality industry. It will open up the culture. The Pokot have a very rich culture which has not been exploited.
Despite the reputation as a warlike community, Pokoti culture has been enjoyed by many from near and far, such as Formula One superstar driver Lewis Hamilton and singer Madonna, who recently toured the area. The residents are now calling upon the county government to open up roads in the region to open up the place to more visitors.
Tunasikia iko mali ingine watu watalii wanaona kuangalia, wanachenga wanaangalia, wanapatia watu hapo unafaidika, wanasomea. Kwa sababu ni kitu ni ya maajabu kabisa.
This place is ready for business. The security is good. We need to capitalize on the serenity of this place.
Wanji Sustin, TV47.
Right, thank you so much, Wanji, for that beautiful report there on Tiaty's hidden gem. To the world of sports now, and the Kenya national football team Harambee Stars earlier today kicked off preparations for the upcoming international friendly matches against Qatar and South Sudan. 9 out of the 10 local-based players called up by Coach Hegin Ferrat have checked into camp. Kenneth Muguna, Masood Juma and Duke Abuya have also reported to the camp, with the rest of the squad expected in camp on Monday. The team is set to depart for Qatar on Wednesday ahead of the first of the friendlies set to be played on Thursday in Doha. Stars will then fly back home on Friday in time for their second friendly against South Sudan. And Kakamega Governor Fernandez Baraza earlier today launched the second edition of Governor's Cup at Bushiri Grounds in Navajo Sub-County. The Governor's Cup Bonanza has attracted 879 matches will be played from the ward level, with participants' qualifications being residents of Kakamega County, with the exception of the players involved in the Division 1. Now, Division 2, the National Super League and the Kenya Premier League. Other than football, the tournament has also included rugby, volleyball and netball, for women speaking to the media during the launch.
Na hii kombe la Governors Cup is very unique kwa sababu tunahusisha soccer teams kwa vijana na wasichana. For the first time pia tuko na mchezo wa raga. We have netball na pia tuko na volleyball for boys and girls. Registration imefanywa and we had over 1,500 teams ambazo zilikuwa registered. What we have done, kila teams ambazo na participate, especially for the soccer, they have been kitted. Na najua when you'll be doing the finals. For the volleyball itakuwa tarehe 30 December. Rugby finals will have them on 31st of December. Na finally, which will be the showstopper for soccer, will be on 1st of January 2024.
Mimi vile umeanzisha hii Governors Cup hapa Kakamega, nimesema mimi sitachezesha mpira ya Kakamega peke yake. Nimepanua the Clio Malala Super Cup. Sasa itachezwa kwa makaunti 5. Itachezwa kutoka Trans Nzoia, Bungoma, Busia, Vihiga na hapa Kakamega.
Nondescript RFC have been crowned as the TSEP7's rugby champions after beating Strathmore 12 tries to 7 in the finals. Now the two teams seemed unbreakable, witnessing a 7-7 scoreline at the intervals before Nondis finding the breakthrough in the second half. In the third position, playoffs Mwamba RFC stand Menengai Oilers 12-7, while KCB defeated rivals Kabras Sugar 21-14.
Finals for Driftwoods, so that was a building block from there. What we've done, we just went back to the drawing board, asked the boys some hard, tough questions, and I think they answered. So yeah, there was a lot of hard work that went into it, and the boys believe in themselves, so that's fantastic for them.
On these years, we've met twice this season, and we've won both our games. But we won't take anything away from them. For starters, Nondis is the only team that hasn't lost a game here in TSAP. All the other teams lost. We lost to Kwea. All the other teams have lost a game. But Nondis is the only team that has gone unbeaten. So they know they've done their homework well. But not take anything away from my boys. They are ready. They always love the final.
And preparations for the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon have continued as organizers had a warm-up race earlier today at the Parkland Sports Club. Over 200 participants, including 60 persons with disabilities, today participated in a warm-up race ahead of the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon, slated to take place on the 29th of October this year. And it's expected to attract over 25,000 participants from around the world.
The 29th of October, as we celebrate our 20th anniversary run, we will have several opportunities for persons with disabilities to participate. We'll have the 21 kilometers wheelchair race. Then for all the other events, the 5 kilometers, the 10 kilometers, the 21 kilometers and the 42 kilometers, persons with disability can also participate. So far we opened registration. Registration is a bit slow, but we are seeing the numbers pick up compared to previous years. At the moment, we've got about just over 2,000 registered runners. As I said, we are aiming for 25,000. We know, sometimes people do register last minute, so we are actually also urging Kenyans and other participants to register early, so that we can be able to close the registration a week before registration, before the race date on 29th.
Right, and it's time for a second break here on TV47 Weekend Edition. Stay with us. When we come back, we get to the point and have that conversation around enforced disappearances. Our sign language interpreter tonight has been Rhoda Nyamai. Stay with us.
want to advertise your business or product and you are on a budget? Then Marquee Africa is the site for you. To advertise, upload a picture or video clip of your business or product and let the clicks get you clients. Get 4,000 clicks for as low as 1,000 bob. Get the app on the Google Play Store or iOS App Store, or visit the website www.marquee.africa. Terms and conditions apply.
How much? No. For a ride?
We're going to town, not to...
Thank you so much for staying with us. Time now for To The Point. Remember, our conversation tonight is on enforced disappearances, and this piece by my colleague Andrin Kilemi leads us to the conversation. So the return of cases of people disappearing under mysterious circumstances is causing concern and unease. Now, initially, there was a 30% reduction in such cases, which was partially attributed to political goodwill. However, recent remarks by the head of state regarding available options for dealing with offenders have created apprehension among civil society organizations who demand that the president retracts his comments. Earlier this week, the world observed the International Day of Enforced Disappearances, with our very own Andrin Kilemi shedding light on the struggles of families who have lost their loved ones under mysterious circumstances and who still hold on to the hope that their dear ones will one day return home.
Imagine this. Your loved one leaves home in the morning for work, never to return. That is the story of Judith Awino Otieno, a 32-year-old woman whose husband went missing under mysterious circumstances, only for his remains to be found by the banks of River Yala. Tears, sorrow and loneliness have engulfed Judith Awino as she remembers the morning of the 8th of August 2021, the day her husband left home never to return.
Na hiyo siku ilifaa waende Kisumu na rafiki yake Rikomeno. Na alisema madhe, nataka niende town na huyo Eric, bado amechelewa. Sijui niende ama niwache tu. Dakika kidogo Omena alimpigia simu. Ati Abongo uko wapi? Mimi niko hapa chini, kuja tuende. Akatoka.
If Judith knew that the phone call would lead her husband to his tragic end, she would never have let him leave home.
Kitu kama saa 9 mamake alimjaribu kumpigia simu.
Nilikuwa napiga hiyo simu, dakika kidogo najaribu, haingii. Dakika kidogo na kwa maana simu kama mtu nafungua huko narudisha message. Na yake hiyo mnyamaza tu.
Darkness fell, and with it, George Otieno's phone remained silent, its owner not returning home or even using another phone to inform his family of his whereabouts. Seconds turned into minutes. Minutes turned into hours, and the day eventually came to an end. George Otieno not in sight.
Dakika kidogo bibi ya Eric alinipigia. Nyaloka. Bongo alirudi nyumbani. Nikasema hapana, Bongo hakurudi. Nikamuuliza na Eric pia hajaonekana.
And that's when his family realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. A search for the two adult friends who had left home in search of better livelihoods began.
Nilitembea kwa muchari mama, wacha nikuambie, kuona watu. Ni uchungu kwangu paka saa hii. Ni uchungu.
The hopes the families of George Otieno and Eric Omeno had that their kin would return alive turned from a bundle to a string as days turned into weeks. Then months passed with their loved ones nowhere to be found. Their worst fears were confirmed 6 months later when their remains were found by Rivayala.
Ukiti akakuja hapa. Amamwambia mama, mwele ingine nimepata huko kwa msituni huko karibu na Gongo huko Rivayala. Na nakaa tu sijui ni mtoto yako. Tuendeni tuone kama naweza kuwa mtoto yako. Akalete akaweka hapo karibu na gari yao. Nauliza mimi mama, hebu angalia huyu kama ni mtoto ya? Hebu angalia hii kama ni mtoto yako. Namwambia hii mtoto yangu kweli. Hii sioni kama ni mtoto yangu. Inaweza kuwa mtoto yangu kweli, hii si mtoto yangu. Mimi sakata kabisa hii si mtoto yangu.
What made the bad situation worse is that parts of his body were missing.
Eric hata nywele yake hata moja kuna nakaa tu mabati, mafupa peke yake. Makucha pia na mea kama ya msichana. Naona hapa alikatwa. Hapa ndio madudu ilikuwa natokea mingi. Na ulimi yake hakukuwa. Hata hii macho hakukuwa. Na dudu yake alikatwa.
After a DNA analysis, it was confirmed that the bodies recovered from the Rivayala were indeed those of George Otieno and Eric Omeno respectively.
Alipatikana mafupa 3 na ilikuwa na nyama kingine kadogo. Juu mafupa ilikuwa tu plain, hakuna nyama. Plain, tena imekauka.
Nilisika yeye kama binadamu, kama mtu mzima, mafupa 3 hiyo. Sanduku ya shilingi 45 na nguo na kila kitu.
2 years later, these families struggle to come to terms with the reality, holding on to the hope that their loved ones will someday return home.
Hata nikilala usiku nalala nikitega masikio nje akuja niite mama Kelly nimerudi fungua mlango.
Bado mimi nafikiri tu mtoto yangu tarudi. Sasa wengine mimi sika mtu mwingine, sijui.
And although this river has hit the headlines for the wrong reasons with tens of bodies retrieved here, residents say that has changed, with reports now indicating that the killings have decreased by 30% and cases of enforced disappearances have decreased by 38% since 2021.
The numbers have declined. We are not seeing 10, 20 bodies being retrieved from the river.
but it is not completely off.
Yala was the epicenter of some of the worst human rights abuses in January last year. Over 30 bodies were found floating across the river.
Missing Voices documented 130 cases of police killings and 22 cases of enforced disappearances in 2022. This compared to 2021, where Missing Voices documented 186 cases of police killings and 36 cases of enforced disappearances. This indicating a total drop of 31.5%.
Down with extrajudicial killings, down with police brutality, down.
Earlier this week, as the world marked International Day of Victims of Enforced Disappearances, it emerged that cases of people disappearing under mysterious circumstances reared its ugly head yet again in Kenya. Recent remarks by the head of state regarding available options for dealing with offenders further created apprehension among civil society organizations who say his remarks are calling into question the government's commitment to upholding the right to life.
Maneno ya wezi ni ngapi? Wahame Kenya, waende jela, ama waende mbinguni.
We are concerned that those statements on their own constitute a grave threat to the rule of law. They portray a country that is no longer being governed by the rule of law and the Constitution.
Human rights organizations are now calling on the government to retrace its steps and reverse the growing culture of impunity and misuse of state power. Andrine Kilemi, TV47.
Right, thank you so much, Andrine Kilemi, for that very emotive piece there. And like I mentioned, that story there forms the basis of our conversation tonight. Again, like I mentioned, my guests are already with me in studio, but you know how we do it here. Before we get to them, we have To the Point. And tonight on To the Point, we are breaking down enforced disappearances. So, this is, of course, on the back of the International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearances, which was on the 30th of August 2023. Now, this day provides an opportunity to raise awareness about this crime and to demand justice for the victims and their families. It is also an opportunity to call on governments to take action and prevent enforced disappearances and to bring those responsible to justice. So, let's take a look at our next slide here, which takes a look at the UN Declaration on Enforced Disappearances. This was in 2010, because this day was actually established by the United Nations. And part of the declaration in 2010 was that 1, no one shall be subjected to enforced disappearance, and 2, no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, internal political instability, or any other public emergency may be invoked as a justification for enforced disappearance. Now, that was in 2010. 13 years later, 2023, what is the situation like globally? So the United Nations Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, that is the UN Working Group, has recorded more than 59,000 cases of enforced disappearances across 110 countries since the year 1980, including 651 new cases originating in 30 countries. Now, the UN Working Group also states that more than 46,000 cases, listen to this, 46,000 cases remain unresolved. So let's come home to Kenya and take a look at what the situation is like here. So Missing Voices have been recording all the cases of lost voices in the country since the year 2007. And the number of victims of enforced disappearances in Kenya currently stands at 350. 350. So this means that more than 300 families in Kenya are unaware of where their loved ones are, whether they're alive or dead. Now, until now. Remember, though, that this data, this figure, 350, may change. It depends on circumstances. This is whether or when the victims are found or confirmed dead. So they may be found alive, the number changes. If confirmed dead, the number changes again. So let's take a look at the next slide here. And between January and June 2023, Kenya has recorded one verified case of enforced disappearance. That is in 2023. Let's take a look at the numbers in 2022 here, where we recorded 22 verified cases of enforced disappearances. Of these, one person was later found alive, 6 were found dead, while 15 are still missing. Remember what I told you about the data changing? So that's what happens. Someone may be found alive or dead, or they may be recovered, right? So in 2021, we had 32 verified cases of enforced disappearances who are all said to have disappeared in police custody. While in 2020, we had 10 cases of disappearances. Now, they disappeared in police custody. Again, remember that this data on the cases of enforced disappearances may change depending on whether the persons listed are found alive or are confirmed dead. Again, these statistics here are by Missing Voices Kenya. And that is all we had for you on To The Point tonight. Of course, we shall be having our discussion shortly. Right. Thank you so much for staying with us. Time now for that conversation I have been telling you about on enforced disappearances, again on the back of the International Day of Commemorating Victims of Enforced Disappearances, which was on Wednesday, August 30th. And my guests, like you know already, are with me in studio. We have Mr. J.A. Mweganja here to my left. He is a commissioner at IPOA, that is the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. To my extreme left is Madam Penina Kome, chairperson, Kenya Champions for Justice, and a victim herself of enforced disappearances. And joining us live via Zoom is Mr. Irongo Houghton, the executive director, Amnesty International Kenya. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for joining me tonight. Right, so I want us to start with a reaction to the piece we saw there by my colleague Andrine Kilemi, because the people she spoke with, one of them said something really striking. She said that anakaa, or she says, mi hukaa nikingoja arudi nyumbani. Ever since their loved one disappeared, each and every single day, she is waiting for this person to come back home. What goes through your mind when you hear that, Mr. Waiganjo?
It's a very difficult scenario, but let me start by probably giving the viewers the mandate of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Because for us, I have seen, for instance, like the data shows that 32 verified cases are disappeared in police custody. As long as we have a complaint or we move by our own motion and find that the police officers were involved or any member of the National Police Service, then it becomes our business to go and follow up and even carry out investigations and confirm whether those disappearances happened and whether the police officers were involved. Mm-hmm. In the event that we find that there is no evidence implicating the police officers as it is, then our mandate, of course, dissipates, because we only come in when the members of the National Police Service are involved. It becomes a challenge then, therefore, when we see figures as verified, when I can tell you for a fact we do have some pending investigations and other cases in court on the same subject, mm-hmm. but the verification or otherwise of that scenario then may be determined by the courts themselves. Right. Because even us has difficulties, because if a case of enforced disappearance is reported to us, then we start looking for evidence that the police officers are involved. Mm-hmm. More often than not, the people perhaps who carry out the abductions, let me say, because enforced disappearances are not necessarily abductions. Abduction is a criminal offense known in law in our jurisdiction. But enforced disappearances, in fact, is a matter that requires some legal framework, some legislation, so that it is inserted in the penal code and given its own proper description and a penalty prescribed thereto. So as we speak now, Kenya does not have a proper verified crime called enforced disappearance, and I know there are efforts to legislate and put it under the purview of a legal framework so that whenever it occurs, then there is an established mechanism to follow up and know who the culprits are. Allow me to add also that we have people also taking advantage whenever these abductions happen. You find there are also criminals who are not necessarily police officers, who will probably take Django jackets and wear like officers and come and abduct you and tell you they are police officers. So what we get mainly is not concrete evidence, that can lead us into a specific police officer who carried out such abductions. I'm not saying that they do not happen, but those that happen are within our jurisdiction and we are already investigating them. So I know families are suffering. It's a very painful situation where a member of your family disappears and nothing seems to be happening. So I want to share this mandate with the DCI and say that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority has their role where the members of the National Police Service are confirmed to have been the ones who carry out those abductions. But on the other hand, the DCI himself then is charged with the mandate of investigating those disappearances and probably bringing the culprits to justice.
Right. And we're going to talk about that further, especially on what your first point was, where you said especially you are mandated to look into cases where, these victims lose their lives in the hands of police or in police custody. We shall talk about that. Penina, I want to get your thoughts, again, regarding that piece there by Andreen, because I think it shows you that you're not alone, Penina. Like I said on To The Point, there are more than 300 families that are not aware, where their loved ones are. They need closure. They don't know whether they're alive or dead. And you've heard from that piece again by Andreen, every day someone is looking out the window or the door, hoping that this person comes back home. How does it make you feel, to know that, you're not alone? There's so many other families that are in a situation like you are, Penina.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for hosting me. Let me start by telling our viewers what Kenya Champion for Justice is. This is a group of survivors who have undergone different torture under the hands of police, and we've decided to come together and use our voice for advocacy to bring change in the community. I'm a survivor of police brutality, and also I'm a relative of a missing person.
When you say you're a survivor of police brutality, what do you mean?
First, my husband was brutally beaten by an OCS, and later, since I was the first witness in the case, I became a victim. They came after my life, and I had to seek protection from the government through IPOA and IJM. Yeah.
Right. Okay. We're going to talk about more of your story. Yeah? You mentioned your husband, you mentioned your cousin. We'll talk about that. But right about now, I want to rope in Mr. Irongo Houghton, who, as I mentioned, is joining us live via Zoom. And again, I want us to start by reacting to that piece by Kilemi, because one of the things that again stood out on that piece, sir, is those remarks by the president himself, Mr. William Ruto, who says, waende jela, wahame Kenya, ama waende mbinguni. And that statement has rubbed human rights activists the wrong way, Rongo. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Very much. And first of all, let me just congratulate you all on the short video that you played in Adrian's work. I think it was very well crafted, and the dangers of enforced disappearances was very well covered. The president's statement was probably one of the most brazen statements that we've heard in several years now. We have, as Amnesty, worked on enforced disappearances and victims of killings for several years, but it has been a while since we've had a head of state speak so clearly and so unlawfully in terms of this description of the only option left is for people to either leave the country to be deported, to go to jail, or to die. And we just, as we said earlier this week with the Law Society of Kenya and with Tiaty Africa and Kenya Human Rights Commission, we were very concerned by the statement because essentially they may be mambo ni matatu, but actually we have 3 levels of criminal justice system that deals with criminals. And that is investigation, prosecution, and the judiciary. And those 3 processes are very distinct and different. And these are not the 3 processes that the President spoke about. So we have a concern that the rule of law, the Constitution of Kenya, and several laws would be violated should the National Police Service or any other law enforcement agency take the President's listen. That these comments came, I guess, one day before the International Day of the Disappeared, August the 30th, made the convention, the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances, even more important. And I think at this point, we have to say to the government, it is critical for them to ratify that international convention. And secondly, also, I think, as Commissioner Waiganda has said, to domesticate legally provisions that relate to abduction and disappearances in our law. But I would probably argue that, when a state officer arrests, detains, or otherwise kills a human being, that is an unlawful act. It is a criminal act. And in the case of George and Eric that we heard from earlier, we need to call for justice for their families.
Right. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Irongo. So now, I want us to paint a picture of how the situation is on the ground before we get to the solutions. And Penina, that's why you're here. Because like I mentioned, you did talk about your husband, you did talk about your cousin, and now I want us to talk about it in depth. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, it was on December 2013. My husband was arrested and booked in at Lualaka police station. I accompanied him up to the station and I left him there full of himself with no injuries. I went back home. The following day, we went to get him out with the sister. When we went there, at the home B, I asked the officer who was in charge, I've come here to get Martin. He told me, according to the record, Martin is in the hospital. The first thing which came into my mind was maybe he fell sick after sleeping on the cold floor. He told us, I'm not in a position to explain. Go to the boss, he will give you more details. So we went to the boss. I thought he is the OCS, but we found it's the deputy OCS. And he told us when he came in the morning, he found 2 cellmates who were brutally beaten. And he took them to the hospital. Now I asked him where. He told us he has left him at Kenyatta Hospital. And he told us we should not waste more time, just go and seek medical attention, then you'll come back and report what you'll find there. So we took a taxi with the sister-in-law, we went to Kenyatta National Hospital. The Martin we found there, even today that picture is still in my mind. He was swollen, his face was swollen, with bruises, deep cuts. You could see them.
Right.
I was like, what has happened? I thought maybe he decided to run away and he fell on the tarmac road and they were dragging him back to the station. So we went to the doctors. We insisted they check on him. When they wheeled him inside, he was already dead. So we went back to the station. The following day, that is on Saturday, We reported the dead, and we demanded to know what happened. We were given a story that he was beaten by the cellmate in the cell. We bought that story. It was me and my sister-in-law. We could not argue with them. So we went back home. Later that day, the relatives from home came, the brother and the sisters, they came. They went to the station, they were told the same story. Now they started preparing for the post-mortem. Post-mortem was done on Monday, and on Tuesday we buried Martin. But God of the vulnerable doesn't sleep. On 27th December, after burying Martin, the other person who was beaten together with them lodged a complaint, and it was featured in the Nation newspaper.
Right.
And when they were the Nation, Muga FM TV, Muga FM radio, sorry, when they were doing the morning briefing, I was asleep. I heard a worker at Kenyatta National Hospital has raised a complaint that he was beaten by Lualaka OCS when he intervened while he was beating another cellmate.
Right.
That linked to my mind. Maybe this is the person who they were beaten together with Martin. So I told my sister-in-law, and she started the journey back to Nairobi. She came, she traced the family of that person, and together they went to IPOA and filed a case. And before that, the OCS and his team, they had ganged up and put the blame on one cellmate,
Right.
Kevin Odhiambo. That is the one who had beaten my husband. So together with Kevin family, Kioko family, they went to IJM and IPOA, and there the journey for seeking justice started.
Yeah.
So I came back to Nairobi after 4 months. One thing I knew, these are police officers, I'm dealing with them. I'm alone. I have a 1-month-old baby. I don't know where to start. So I had that fear in me.
Right.
But after being assured that there are NGOs which are helping us, because even I was just imagining where will I get the lawyers, the money to pay the lawyers. So when I was told there are some NGOs who have agreed to assist us,
Right.
so I came back. We started the journey of seeking justice, one for Kevin, because they had done investigation and found that Kevin was innocent. He's not the one who had beaten Martin. So we took 1 year seeking justice for Kevin. Kevin was released under DPP order, and then the OCS, he was booked in. Now, my problem started when, since I was the first person to testify, when I went there at the dock, I didn't know that I was exposing myself to them. They didn't know me earlier.
Yes.
Because if they had known me, maybe they could have done something to me then. So when I testified, I gave my testimony, and they found that my testimony, it's like it's haipelekani na yao.
Yeah.
Because they had lied. They had told a lot of lies that my husband was beaten by mob justice, his wet clothes, it had rained on that day, which were all lies. Hakukuwa kumenyesha. Nilienda na mtoto wangu mpaka station, mtoto mdogo. Hatukuwa na mwavuli. Kwani kulikuwa kunanyesha tu hapo station. Unaona? So wakaona, it's like waliona sasa nitawafunga.
Right.
After 3 days, they came after me. Juu pale kotini, I've told where I work, where I stay, na nilikuwa natoka kotini naenda kazi jioni. So walikuja pale kwa gate ya kampuni, wakapaki gari hapo, gari ina number plate, na askari wa patrol wa the company I was working with, KK, when they went to see, kwa nini ile gari iko pale, they told them, we are police officers na tunafanya kazi yetu. Ndani kuna wanaume 5, the vehicle is tinted, and the vehicle doesn't have number plates. Lakini saa mimi nilikuwa najua what they are doing there. So wakati nilitoka kazi, instinct kwanza ilikataa nikiwa kazini. Nilikuwa nitoke saa 4:30. Nikaambia wenzangu hapana. dhamira zangu imekataa. Wacha nitoke. Wakaniambia wetoka. So I left work at 9. There's a boda guy who always came to pick me, but that day I said no. Let me get another boda. So I told the security person nisimamishie boda yote yenye inapita. So akanisimamishia boda, nikapanda boda. Nilikuwa na reflector jacket. Vile nilipanda boda ile gari na imekuwa pale from 6 p.m. mpaka saa 4 tunaelekea saa 4. Wakagurumisha gari. It went by my direction. I told the boda guy, don't follow that vehicle. Usipite at all cost. Don't overtake it. Hata kama ni pesa ngapi, I'll pay you. So tukaenda pole, tukua kwa ile gari inatembea ni kama iko na mechanical problems. Inaenda tu the way I'm going.
Right.
Tukafika mahali, there were no security lights. So even the boda guy has started sensing something. He told me remove the reflector jacket. So I removed the reflector jacket, he removed it, and he turned back. So we went back like we are going back to the company. Kufika mahali kulikuwa na boda wengi hapo stage, tukaingia hapo, nikashuka tukakaa. Within a second, ile gari ilikuja ikapita kama ya safari rally. Ikielekea mahali nimetoka kwa kampuni. It's like they wanted kabla yani walifikiria labda nimerudi kwa kampuni. So kabla nifunguliwe gate pale, wakuu wamekuja na wamenifikia. So wakati walirudi na mimi nikapanda boda, the boda ambaye akanipeleka mpaka kwa nyumba, akaniuliza na nini, nikamueleza. Nikamwambia ile kesi iko pale ya UCS. Aliua bwanangu. Boda ambaye akaniambia sorry. Akaniambia wewe ingia kwa nyumba, hata pesa staki.
Yeah.
Juu sasa ameona hata labda angekuwa kwa shida. Akaniambia no, hata pesa staki. Mimi nikaingia kwa nyumba, nika-ignore tu. I didn't call IPO, I didn't call IJM that day. Na nikalala. Luckily I was alone. It's like God had spoken to me earlier. Because a month before the case, we went to court, I told my house girl and my girl, she was 2 years old, 2 years and 3 months, waende nyumbani. So I was alone in the house. So nikalala. The following day, nikangoja ikafika saa 9 nikaenda kazi. But hiyo siku bado dhamira zilikataa. Nikatoka 6 jioni. Nimeingia 3 p.m. nikatoka 6 p.m. Na vile nilitoka, I called a friend, an employee of Kenya Breweries, because I used to work at Kenya Breweries, but under contract.
Right.
I called an employee, he came inside the company, nikaingia kwa gari. So askari wangeta hawakuona nikitoka. The vehicle was tinted, so hawakuona nikitoka. So jamaa alikuja kitu saa 2, akauliza nataka kuona Penina, akaambiwa Penina ako kwa kazi. Mpaka saa 4 ndiye anatoka. But they didn't know if I'd already left.
Right.
So when my colleague was getting out, I think they mistook him for me. He was a man, but a figure tu ni zile like za mwanamke. Na alikuwa anavaa specs tu kama mimi, na alikuwa anapenda kuvaa hoodie kama mimi. It's like waliona tu ni mimi. So boda came mbio, ikamwambia kuja nikuokoe. Kuna watu wanataka kukuua. Ukijana akashindwa, boda. Akakumbuka Penina, akandandia boda. So vile alindandia boda, the boda guy, it's like I realized, this is not a man, this is not a woman. Huyu ni mwanaume. And we later realized the boda guy was part of the gang. He had been sent.
Yes.
How could he have known that wanataka kuniua?
Kweli.
So walienda wakaenda mpaka Safari Park, akamuuliza by the way nimekuokoa but ulikuwa unaenda wapi? Kamwambia mimi nilikuwa naenda baba ndogo but najua chenye wanataka. My senior, because I was their senior, was there, mimi nilikuwa mkubwa wao, ako na kesi kotini.
Yes.
Na nadhani huyo ndio wanatafuta.
Sawa.
The boda yakamwambia njoo najua wanatufuata. Hatutaenda ijia ya Osop. Tunaingililia hapa Ngumba Estate ni kufikisha nyumbani.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry for cutting you short, but you're going to tell us more because I want Mr. Weganjo here and Mr. Irongo to react to what you're saying as you tell us. Because this is what I said to you, sir, earlier, that we shall go back to that beat where you said that you take a keen interest, particularly on deaths that happen within police custody. Now, Penina here is telling us that, okay, fine, yes, she lost her husband at the hospital, but it was as a result of, being in police custody. And she did mention, having gone to Ipoh, although I'm sure you've listened to the whole story, what you said. But people like Penina and people like her, what are they supposed to do when it happens and now as it's happening, because she's telling us of being exposed to danger, all in the quest of her husband's, justice, or in the search of justice following her husband's death?
I think Penina's case is well known, and the Ruaraka OCS of the time is known. There are matters pending in court. He went through a criminal justice system. But what I would want to tell people who probably would meet such circumstances is, first of all, and we do that ourselves all the time, and I do not know, although we have gaps as well at the independent policing, because we work closely with the Witness Protection Program. And the Witness Protection Directorate is the one that is charged with protecting witnesses. Like she was a very vulnerable witness at that particular point in time, and it happens all the time. But that agency also has no budget, really. You can imagine how many witnesses they deal with that requires protection, and we too are unable to get our witnesses within that program, mainly because to get a witness within that program, one has to have been summoned to court to give evidence, so that we also give a justification to Witness Protection Program that the person they are taking on board is properly within their jurisdiction as well. So when you go to a police station, for instance, and you're sure that the person that you're seeking is within the police custody, you must make sure and ensure that that person has been entered in the occurrence book of the day. Because what normally happens, if the police officers do not intend to use criminal justice system, probably use extrajudicial issues, they will not book you properly within their occurrence book. And I think that's very important for viewers to know, that if you are locked in a police station and your name has not been entered in the occurrence book, then potentially the police can say that they don't have you within their station.
Right.
So that is an important fact. Secondly, you must let your kith and kin know where you are and where you have been taken. And also don't shy off to get in contact with agencies and non-state actors, and also state actors like ourselves, because independent policing is also a state agency, but independent. And our independence is emphasized because we operate outside the Ministry of Interior. We may be drawing our budget from the line Ministry of Interior, but our investigations and our mandate is completely independent. And the police are required to report to us any death that has happened in custody. For instance, your husband's case was very peculiar because the authority was not notified of the death within police custody. So there was a clear case of undercover or cover-up, I would say. And the police are known to do that all the time. And that is a challenge we also have as an authority, so that when we start investigating them, the Blue Code of Conduct, that's what it's called, brother covering brother. It happens all the time. So it's incumbent on the relatives of the victim to make sure that they follow very closely. Because even if we are a state agency and can be able to carry out certain investigations, our establishment is very small.
Right.
We have a proposed establishment of more than 1,000 staff. But right now we are only 270 with about slightly over 80 investigators. So you can imagine we are oversighting a service that has over 150 officers.
Right.
So we have gaps. And the only way we can cover those gaps is if, for instance, the non-state actors, the civil society, and the victims themselves can take charge and follow up, like the way she did. In fact, if she was not proactive and she did not insist, then that matter would have also gone cold.
Right.
So we know for a fact there are families who are suffering because either their relatives were arrested by police officers, taken to police stations, and when they followed up, they found that even the occurrence book does not carry their name. So the police can deny that they ever arrested that person at that particular point in time. So it's important for viewers to know that when a police officer arrests you, your records must start at that particular point in time, so that you are known for a fact that you are within the custody of that particular police station.
Okay, Mr. Rongo, I want to rope you in, and I want to get your perspective as, Amnesty International, as human rights activists. What is the situation like on the ground, on the back again of what Mr. Weganjo here has said, and on what Penina was talking about earlier, because she felt, after following up on this case of her husband, she felt that she had exposed herself, and she has, given us a proper account of how things went out. And I'm certain that she's not alone in this. So what, again, as a human rights group, as Amnesty International, do you do to, I know it's not your mandate really, but to protect these people, to protect people like Penina?
Amnesty International is a human rights organization. We campaign, we document human rights abuses. So very much, this is our mandate. And if you see us rising to respond to the president or respond to the inspector general or any other state official on the issue of rule of law and constitutionalism, that is us doing our job. I think the statistics were well captured by your team earlier on in the show, and I think the Missing Voices Alliance have done a great job in terms of keeping us grounded in terms of the facts. But I think what we must see is greater political will and also greater state, energy around ensuring that police stations, which should be the safest places in the Republic. I mean, I think our 20,000 or so police stations, under the Constitution, should be some of the safest places in the Republic. But the reality for most Kenyans is that this is not the case. 10 years after the Constitution, we did an opinion poll, and we found that Kenyans feared the police more than they feared poverty. And that's because 1 in 2 Kenyans believed that there was no equality under the law, that if you did not have power, if you did not have privilege or resources, you could find yourself being victimized by either individual police officers or even police officers on the instructions of their commanding officers. So I think we have to make the law work for all. There is a reason why we talk about equality under the law, and that is one of the principles within our Constitution.
Right.
Commissioner Weganjo spoke, I think, about the importance of the rights of accused persons. And these are so important that they are in our Constitution, and viewers can read them for themselves. Article 49 of the Constitution essentially says that, as soon as you're arrested, as soon as you are arrested, you have the right to be informed in a language of your choice, the reason for the arrest. You have the right to remain silent, and you have the right to essentially communicate with an advocate or a member of your family if you need that to do. Now, obviously, the reality for many Kenyans is very different from this, but I think that's why Amnesty International and other human rights organizations are here to essentially report cases where police do not follow the law, because to not do this is essentially to begin the process of a criminal exercise rather than something that is provided under our law. So I think this is the starting point for all people who are arrested, which is essentially to demand the circumstances under which they've been requested, or even to request if they don't wish to make a demand, but they must be told. And I think, as Commissioner Weganjo said, the reason for that arrest has to be documented in the occurrence book. And if it is not indicated there, then something wrong is beginning to happen.
Right. Right. Penina, again, you've told us about your husband, and I want you to now tell us about your cousin, because that happened, was it a year ago or 2 years ago? Last year, 2022.
Last year, June.
Last year, June. Yeah. Take us through that.
Okay, on 29th June last year, my cousin was hired to transport solar panels at Kakuma Mission Hospital together with his friend, Lawrence Mawira Njeru. They went to Kakuma, the journey was okay, they delivered the solar panels, and on their way back, the last contact which they did with a relative, that is the mom, was at 5 p.m. on their way back, that is on 29th. And the mom told him, because it's getting late, and I hear that Eldoret road is not safe at night, when you reach Kitale, just sleep there, then you'll start the journey back to Nairobi the following morning. From 8 p.m., their phones went off, both of them. So we can't tell, up to today, we can't tell if they decided to proceed with the journey at night, or if they slept at Kitale, or if they were abducted at Kitale. We don't know. The following day, the brother tried calling him at 8 in the morning, at 10, at 12. When it reached 2, he said, no, this is not normal for Delic. His phone has never been off for more than that minutes. So he decided to go and report at Kasarani police station, because that's where they reside. He used to reside there near Tiaty. So he went to the brother went to Kasarani, he reported the case. When he was there, he received a call that Delic vehicle has been found abandoned just next to Salga police station. Wow. Now there the torture started now. Because when the vehicle has been found abandoned and the driver is not there and the co-driver is not there, what's coming to your mind?
All right.
They are missing. So the brother had to record another statement just there at Kasarani. The following day, they traveled to Salga. They found that the Salga police have towed the vehicle to the station. They recorded another statement there. We left the Kasarani now, DCI, to do their work. After a week doing follow-up, we decided to go to Kiambu, DCI. We launched another statement there, another record there. So that's what we've been doing up to date. We've not received any report so far, even the Safaricom one. So as a relative of a missing person, I find that there's somewhere the state or the government is failing us. Up to today, we've not received any report. Even to be told who are the last person, because I was expecting them after they go to Safaricom, they get those records, maybe they'll get some leads there of who abducted my cousin. It's 1 year now and 2 months. We don't know their whereabouts. You can imagine the torture the mother and the father and the siblings they are going through.
Right.
The financial constraint. Because the relatives have been coming from Meru, wakisikia kuna mwili yala, wanaenda, and you can't go alone. Munaenda mko watu watano. Familia si eti iko stable. Delic was the only stable person in their family, and he was the firstborn. Hao wengine wako shule. You can imagine, mnatoka watu watano for that support, fare kutoka Meru to Yala, lazima mspend kitu 10,000. So unapata familia inauza ng'ombe, everything. Yes, Delic alikuwa na pesa. We cannot access his account. Kwa sababu, normally, sheria usema, mtu akipotea, when a person goes missing, he is declared dead by the court after 7 years. So after 7 years, ndio mnaweza pata death certificate.
Alright.
Ya kuwawezesha maybe mu-access account zake kama kuna pesa pale. Another thing sasa yenye kama familia, nikiongelea wale wote wenye wamepoteza watu wao, you find that in most cases, abducted issues zinapenia men. Men are the most affected. And you find that they are the breadwinners. So you find unapata a wife is left behind with the children. Bibi naye ndio huyo anaanza safari ya kutafuta bwana, watoto wanakuwa neglected. Kama ni biashara, nobody to learn, unapata sasa ile familia imerudi kwa umaskini. So tunapitia changamoto mingi kama familia zenye tumepoteza watu wetu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Waiganja, where is the missing link? Because I remember the last time you were here when we were talking about, extrajudicial killings, you told us, how you do your investigations, you forward your findings to the ODPP, who then forwards to the judiciary. But why does it, take so long to get this justice? Where is this missing link for Penina? Because for her now it's the second time, her husband and now the cousin, and I'm sure she's not alone. And probably even the statistics we had of 350 people are probably even higher. Where's the missing link?
On the cousin's case, I think, and that is what I started by saying, that in some instances, IPOA is not directly involved. But on that case, IPOA can be involved in a manner that a complaint can be filed for police inaction. Because if it is an abduction, the state is responsible. An enforced disappearance, the state is always the suspect, because the state is given the responsibility, it has the responsibility of making sure the security of the citizens, the safety of the citizens, and of course the property of the citizens. So on the issue that she has alluded to, I think that is a report that IPOA should get. Even if we're not going therefore to investigate the abduction itself, because that appears now to be the work of the DCI, because it is not alleged that the people, it's not like your husbands, because your husbands, the police were directly involved. But on this other one, there's no evidence to show that the police themselves were involved. But the police are involved in the fact that you have made reports, and those reports have borne no fruit, and you have not been updated. So it's a clear case of police inaction. So I think it would be important for you to also lodge a complaint with the independent policing, so that we pursue the angle of police inaction, and we are able to follow from the date the report was made, the efforts you have made, and the fact that you have not got anywhere. Because I don't believe that the state can fail to unravel a case of enforced disappearance unless there's involvement within their rank and file. And that happens all the time. And we are able to establish ourselves when we are investigating them. But if you leave the police to investigate themselves, then essentially what you're doing, you're giving up your pursuit for justice to the same people that you believe may be the perpetrators of the injustice. So that's important. But secondly, also, enforced disappearances must be looked at from the prism of the victim. I mean to say, and here I also want to warn the members of the National Police Service, because not all police officers act in concert in some of these matters. And I want to bring in perspective the case of Willy Kimani. The case of Willy Kimani, about 3 officers were charged, 5 officers were charged, 4 officers. The raid officer, who was also convicted, the only evidence that led her to her conviction of conspiracy to that murder was because she agreed with one of the, I think the first accused person, to omit the entry in the OB for the booking of Willy Kimani and company. And that is how now she got convicted. So you see how serious it can get. Perhaps in a police station, an officer comes with a person they have arrested and advises the person at the report desk, hii usiweke, hii usibook, hii tunafanya anaenda. That one would cause a lot of problems to the officers if they didn't know or if they were not conspirators. That omission itself is conspiracy by an officer. So I want to say that in every case of an enforced disappearance, the state is always the first suspect. And even if it does not show that the police are directly involved, there is need to move to court, like in the case of your cousin. Even when you bring the complaint to the independent policing, there's also need for you to move the court, to ask the court to give the orders of habeas corpus. The orders of habeas corpus is court telling the Inspector General of the police to produce the missing person, dead or alive.
Okay.
in court.
Okay. So my director, Nick, tells me we have 3 minutes left. My goodness, I always wonder where time flies, where it goes. Mr. Rongo, I'm going to get your closing remarks now. We're out of time, but we keep having this conversation year in, year out, sir. I mean, especially after every August 30th, after every day of commemorating this day. I mean, why is this the case? And so what is the way forward? What is the solution to, having to seeing us, get to a day where we'll say we have 0 cases of enforced disappearances? Do you envision us getting there?
I do envision it one day. I live in hope as a human rights activist. It's the only thing that keeps us focused, that one day our country will be a match for our constitution, and the things that we are describing will be a thing of the past. And many countries have gone through this past. And if you think about places like Argentina, places like Algeria and others, they had cases where there were thousands, if not tens of thousands of disappearances back in the 1970s and 80s. And I think that their reality now is very different. I think what we have said this week is that enforced disappearance threatens us all. There is nothing more ironic than having a government essentially argue for enforced disappearances when members of its own cabinet experienced this less than a year ago. If you think about Cleophas Malala, Dennis Itumbi, current Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki, they were all victims of enforced disappearances, if only for a brief period of time. And I think it's important that we recognize that the rule of law has to work for us all, not just for the government of the day. And for that reason, as Amnesty International, we will continue to demand an end to enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Rongo. Penina, as part of your closing remarks, what would you want done? What do you expect to happen? Again, you're mentioning, your cousin. We talked about your husband. What would you want to see done for people like you and the people you represent at Kenya Champions for Justice?
Okay.
Under a minute, please.
Okay. My call on government is to, one, they should come up with a DNA database or a technology or a central station where relatives of missing persons, they can go there, give their DNA. When the bodies are found dumped in rivers or in the forest, it will be easier for them to identify their relatives, because it's draining the families financially.
Yes.
Going each and every morgue where you hear news or report that there is a missing body there. So if the government could do that, it will be of so much help. The other thing is for the DCI to investigate without discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes to high-profile people, you find that the case goes faster, the investigation goes faster, and within a week, they have the report. But for the slum dwellers or for the vulnerable, it will take years.
Right.
Because for my cousin, he's a nobody. So that maybe that's why they are not doing that.
Right.
The other thing, they give reports of their findings to the relatives, so that the relatives can have a closure.
Right.
Even if they have found that he's dead,
right,
it's better to bury the person, and you love
and being aware of where they are. Okay, so Nick tells me we need to wrap up in under a minute, sir. What is IPOA doing in terms of your mandate? Because I'm sorry, sir, every time we put it out there that we're having this conversation and IPOA is coming, we get comments such as, and I wrote it down so that I don't miss it, they keep quiet when acts were being done. Now they seem to wake up, to be waking up whenever we have such cases going on or such days like the one we had on August.
We have had a sitting with the President of the Republic of Kenya, and we have agreed that there is need for a public inquest on matters of enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killings. And we have escalated the matter to him, and he has advised the CS Interior to take up the matter and to look at the budgetary issues related to that matter, so that the families can come themselves and give their stories before an inquest.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore that inquest will culminate into recommendations. Those recommendations then will have netted the victims and the perpetrators.
Right.
And then action will be taken against the perpetrator. So just reminding the president of our city and his commitment to form a public inquest on matters of extrajudicial killing and enforced disappearances. And I also want to thank the non-state actors, Houghton Ilongo and others who have put a lot of concerted effort to see that justice is done.
Right.
We want to assure Kenyans that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority has and is pushing to have a public inquest to resolve these matters of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances once and for all.
Right.
That's our commitment.
Right, that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time and your contribution. Mr. J.A. Moiganja, Commissioner, Independent Policing Oversight Authority, Penina Kome, Chairperson, Kenya Champions for Justice and a survivor herself, and of course, Mr. Irongo Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya. Once again, thank you so much for your time and your valuable contribution, ladies and gentlemen. So that's all the time